You know, a lot of the times players' voices, especially in Europe, are silenced.
There's a lot of noise in terms of media, and your narrative can get spun around.
Obviously, Otman is extremely controversial. He makes big statements.
I think social media right now is just a presence of highs.
People don't really get to hear a lot of our perspective of what's going on. And I think before that podcast, I kind of had an idea of who I thought Nigel was. And then after that podcast, I had a completely different respect for who he was as a person.
People don't understand that, yeah, basketball is our job, but it's not like who we are as people. The players should have their platform to tell their version of the story, not just in sports, but I think also in life. There's a lot of noise in terms of media, and your narrative can get spun around, but if you have the platform, nothing can get spun around because it's coming from you. So being the caliber of player that Shane is and the platform that he has, there's no reason not to start a podcast where, you know, mimicking the guys like in the NBA, Draymond Green show, all these different NBA podcast shows. Why not do it in Europe? You know, and a lot of guys start it when they're done playing and they're not as popular. Why not start it when you are playing? So that was kind of my idea for him. And it wasn't even like, hey, let's do it together. It was more so like, I think you should do this. If you need a co-host, okay, I'll help. But that's what my idea was for it.
It feels amazing, man. It's been a long season. We worked really hard as a team. So for me to be able to do something like this in my second year in Europe, it's amazing. And hopefully now we can continue to make some history for our franchise and win a championship.
We've had conversations about it, and I think we were actually in Baskonia last year talking about it, and we were watching somebody's clips from one of their podcasts. And then I think that night I actually went home and I told my assistant, went to the hotel room, and I told my assistant, like, yo, I really want to do this next year. So that's when, you know, we started talking to Hyundai and started having all the conversations outside of what needed to happen to kind of bring it to life. And then, you know, we shot our first kind of pilot episode with Brian Dunstan, and it was received really well. And it's kind of just taken on its own life from there. So.
Yeah, and he's completely results-based. He's come in the locker room so many times. Brian Dunstan, 2 rebounds. 25 minutes.
You know, a lot of the times players' voices, especially in Europe, are silenced. And people don't really get to hear a lot of our perspective of what's going on and our perspectives of what's going on the court, off the court, around the league. I think a lot of media controls the narrative. So basically exactly what he was saying, to kind of take some of that power back and kind of give our perspective and give our opinion on what's going on, and not just being a product of just, you watch them play basketball and that's all you see from them. Kind of being able to hear our voices and hear about what we think and how we perceive what's going on out here. I think that's a positive thing, and I think a lot of guys are now trying to take their own voices back, and this is one of the ways to do that.
With the postseason places well out of sight, Uturu bundling his way, passing back out, Bryant.
Yeah, I'll say, just to comment on the shut up and dribble thing, I'll say that people don't understand that, yeah, basketball is our job, but it's not like who we are as people. So, you know, having Vesely here to show his personality outside of the court allows him to be humanized as a person. So when you go to Partizan or go to these places, people actually understand the guy has kids, what he likes to do. They don't see him just as this guy who makes or misses shots, you know. And I think when you humanize a person, it allows you to, you know, have empathy for them when they do play well, when they have injuries, when they're mentally not well. So being able to humanize us and humanize our guests allows, I think, not only a better product for basketball, but a better product for EuroLeague as well.
We've kind of tried to choose people that have kind of polarizing characters. Obviously, Otman is extremely controversial. He makes big statements. Mike makes big statements. Nigel is a very different kind of person that people, and even I'll say for myself, you obviously see stuff on social media and you hear things about somebody, but until you're sitting in front of them and having an actual conversation with them, you can't really get an understanding of for who they are. And I think before that podcast, I kind of had an idea of who I thought Nigel was, and then after that podcast, I had a completely different respect for who he was as a person. So I think this is why this kind of platform is so great, because it gives a person a chance to kind of, like he said, humanize himself and be like, listen, I do play basketball. you're gonna love me if I make shots, you're gonna hate me if I miss shots. But at the end of the day, when I take the jersey off, I'm a human just like you are. And I think the guests that we have history with them, and they're kind of polarizing characters over here that I think people need to hear from. So I think that's how I've gone about suggesting people that we should reach out to, and I think Elijah's kind of on that same ideology.
Even if he get the Lamborghini, I think he will not reach to your contract change.
We have a long list of people that we want to have conversations with. I think obviously Obradovic is somebody that people would love to hear from, and I think being able to get Aragon on here early on in one of the first episodes kind of shows how the conversation is gonna go. So it makes people more comfortable to come on a situation like that. We were actually gonna have Itudis on, but he ended up taking the job in Israel, so we weren't able to put that one together. So there's a lot of people that we want to continue to have conversations with, and you just gotta stay tuned to figure out who it's gonna be.
Hollands off to Larkin. Oturu rolls inside, found perfectly by Shane Larkin.
And I think that's one of the benefits of me and Elijah is that we both played in the NBA, we both played in Europe, so we have kind of connections and a network of people from all around the world. And I think that is one of the good things about this platform is that we have those relationships, we have those experiences playing in both sides where we can reach out and have those conversations openly with people and understand them, and they can be just as comfortable as we are in having that conversation on this kind of platform. So I wouldn't say there's like a ceiling or a limit to who we're going to try to bring on the show. We just have to continue to put out good quality content and show people that it's a safe space to come give their piece and let their voice be heard and kind of show a different side of themselves outside of just the basketball player. And I think if we can do that, then I think we can continue to have great guests.
I make YouTube videos, but I follow Monique, what he's doing on YouTube, and I think it's like same ideas as I think it's humanizing him as a player and also bringing young fans along the journey to show them the highs and lows, because I think social media right now is just a presence of highs. So being able to take the curtain away and see behind the scenes of what it looks like after a bad game, not just a good game, but a bad game, what it looks like when you need to recover after multiple games. So I watch him a lot. Okay, obviously we're not editing stuff, but I give them recommendations just from watching podcasts, from like clips, what will happen, telling him what he needs to do in terms of like branding. So when people are taking it, they're seeing his name on it, that type of stuff. Just more, I would say, analytical stuff, but obviously you want to clip the main stuff up, Vesely talking about Fenerbahce or Partizan stuff to get people to actually watch.
Just wanted to do it, and then it ended up being the greatest 3 weeks of my life. I've never been happier in my entire life. And the only sad thing about it is I feel like I've reached a level of happiness during that time that like I'll be chasing the rest of my life. But it was the greatest experience that I've ever had.
Conversation we had with Nigel is just one of the examples of kind of, even with Otman, it's like we played with him for
That's true.
4 years, 5 years, and I don't think I ever sat and had as long of a conversation with him as I did that day.
Or seen him smile so much.
Yeah, seen him smile, or saw his personality in that way. And obviously we had a working relationship, but now we're on 2 different teams, so it's not like boss and player. It's kind of just like 2 people sitting here having a conversation about things that have happened and the experiences from his perspective and from ours. So I think it's been great, and I think that's been my favorite part about it, is just kind of seeing more of the human. Like, we basically see these guys the same amount as you guys do in terms of we see them play, we see the highlights, we see the halftime interviews, the post-game interviews, and that's kind of it, unless you have a personal relationship with somebody that you've known. But to be able to sit down and have those conversations with these guys, get the backstories of what's happened with, Mike or Bryant or, the guests that we have coming up, just having those conversations and kind of understanding who they are as a human more than just a basketball player has been my favorite part.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think most of the time when we're, like you said, meeting these guys, it's a battle, it's a war, right? So we're not focused on figuring out who this person is or who their family is. So even I say humanizing for the fans, it humanizes them for me as well. Like, I've played against Nigel multiple times, and I've always seen him as, I gotta go kill a guy, I gotta go kill a guy. But when I see him as a human, then I understand him better as a person, and it allows me to actually build a relationship. As you see in the NBA, these guys have relationships even though they're on different teams, and I think something like this allows you to develop those relationships with other players.